Welcome back, everyone, to hour number two, a Sunday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones, our NFL guru insider, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us for hour number two from our good friends over at Scoots Liquors and Play It Again Sports. Labor Day right around the corner. Get in there for all that golf equipment, used merchandise, football jerseys, kickoff on Thursday. Kansas City and the Lions, they got all the old school throwbacks, 1450 Clemensford Road in Deptford, New Jersey. So we've been taking a look at top tiers, if you will, my friend, quarterbacks. I want to kind of switch gears on this Sunday and kind of start to look at some of the quarterbacks I believe are going to be on the hot seat and put on notice. I'll throw a couple to you, but first and foremost, how are you?
Doing great. It's been a good long weekend and keep it going. But I just can't wait for the seventh.
Yeah.
Mahomes against Goff. And we'll see if the Chiefs can keep this thing going. But I'm excited for the season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they are in the midst of a dynasty, and you mentioned Jared Goff, and he's one of the quarterbacks I have. We'll kind of go back and forth here. You mentioned the other day, where do we put him in that top tier? I mean, listen, if you look at what the Lions are already talking about a new deal for him. He's got 20 million due in 2023, 21 million 2024. He's just 28 years of age. He put up some monster numbers, 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. But I still believe the NFL is a what have you done for me lately business. So even if they're looking to offer or talk about a new contract with Jared Goff, I still believe he is a quarterback, pardon me, that's on notice this season, because the mark on him is, can he duplicate it? Can he do it for that second season? What's your thoughts?
And the thing is, they have Hendon there, who they drafted out of Tennessee. I know he's a little banged up, but he's the quarterback waiting. So whenever you bring in that, younger developmental guy, he's in the wings as well. But when I look at Goff, great season last season. He stayed healthy. They started 17 games for them. They were on a cusp of making the playoffs. Obviously, that win in Green Bay was a huge win for them.
Yep.
Um, they're kind of changing though the way they're developing that offense. Their main back, he's down with the Saints now, and he scored all his touchdowns last year, and um, we'll see how they build around that. But Goff has Amon St. Brown, and we'll see the other pieces that he has there. He lost his tight end. They sent Hawkinson over to
That's
the
right.
Vikings. So, you know, Marvin Jones Jr., he's a little older out there. So there's a few pieces here and there, but they're going to need for him to drive the car more. So I definitely would agree with you that he is on a hot seat, former first round draft pick. And everybody's always going to say, did the Rams get the better of that deal? Obviously, the Rams get Stafford, they win the Super Bowl. So everybody's going to point to that. But Goff, it's now or never. And everybody's talking about Dan Campbell. Last year they were Hard Knocks darlings,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's now or never for them. So, the Ford family wants a winner. And yes, Goff is firmly on the hot seat, and we'll see if he's able to get it done.
Interesting. You mentioned the trade of Hawkinson, who turns around and signs a $66 million contract extension, a deal with Minnesota. And you look at his numbers. I mean, again, I know guys are getting paid, but I look at his numbers. He doesn't strike me as, 4 years, 66, 42 million guaranteed, 17 million. But listen, he's a big time part of that offense for Minnesota. It's their gain. Obviously, Detroit's lost. Then you happen to mention Stafford, who, oh, by the way, have him on the list. And it's only because the Rams went all in a couple years ago. They sold their soul to dance with the devil and get a Super Bowl win. And they did. It was a team that was leaking oil late. Stafford has had a really nice career, but off injured now, 5-12. He's not going to retire, because if he did that, he'd have to give back, I think, almost 48 million in guaranteed money. That deal runs through 2026. So I'm just wondering, when you look at the Rams and they're trying to build around some of these veteran players, and they already got some issues with Kupp being hurt, Donald's getting older, Stafford's getting older. At the end of the day, man, it falls on the franchise quarterback's shoulders, does it not? So I believe this is a make or break type of season for Stafford, even though he's won a Super Bowl. He's a couple years removed from a Super Bowl. Are we going to get the Stafford we saw in the prime, or is this an aging quarterback who's on the decline?
Yeah, Q, I would tend to lean towards we're seeing a quarterback on a decline, and he kept getting those nagging injuries last year, and he just couldn't get over it. It started, I think, with his throwing hand. He hit his hand on a helmet, and he just was never right after that. And we know he's had the ACL in the past, and he overcame that, but he's very beat up at this age, and their offensive line has not been the same since Whitworth retired after that Super Bowl win, and you talk about what have you done for me lately? Sean McVay, that's who he is. He's a coach. He wants the shiny new toy and he wants
Yeah,
to work with him. And you know, maybe he's looking for his next guy. They have Stetson Bennett there from Georgia. He's more of a dink and donkey. He's a very good college quarterback. He's in the wings, like I said earlier. When you have a guy that's a developmental type in the background, you always have to wonder about that. Now McVay, he wants to keep winning, and does he believe in Stafford like he did a couple years ago? So it's going to be interesting with them because we talk about Cooper Cup's hamstring, very lingering. They have Van Jefferson there, a couple other younger receivers, but that offense is kind of depleted. They have Higbee at the tight end position, who's kind of a dynamic guy to move in the slot here and there, but not much else. So I definitely think the Stafford's on a hot seat, and they're always looking for the next quarterback in the draft to build upon. And when you talk about the Rams, they gave away all their picks,
that's right.
not a lot to build with in the draft. So, they're in a tough position and they need Stafford to play well. But I'm kind of thinking like you are, that he's on a hot seat and he's on a downturn of his career.
Yeah, and again, the comments come out from his wife about not being on the same page with the players and the cell phones, and you wonder, all right, where that kind of ties in everything. Mac Jones, I mean, look, he was the number 15 overall draft pick 2021. Um, he played well that rookie year. If you look at his numbers, um, 17 game starter, 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, a couple picks, completion percentage right around 65%. Then he trailed off to 14 touchdowns, 11 picks. His head coach, an all-time great, future Hall of Famer, and Belichick, the hoodie, I think is also on the hot seat. What's alarming to me is that when you take these coordinators away, look what happens, right? He had McDaniel jettisons to Pats. Now all of a sudden, Belichick really made two bad coaching hires, Patricia and then Joe Judge, who was a friggin' debacle with the Giants and a jackass and a clown. So what do I have to do? I have to now reset the table, second stint, get Bill O'Brien. The Pats are going to be an interesting team to watch, but Mac Jones, to me, I mean, I don't know what you do with this kid. I don't know how much stock we put in the fact that he lost McDaniels and then he had to deal with Patricia and Judge, and that was a disaster. But 17 games as a rook, Pro Bowl selection, alternate, put up good numbers, but then those numbers trailed off drastically last year. So where are you at right now with Mac Jones?
Yeah, he's an interesting one, and everybody's always going to point to, you know, Patricia being miscast as an offensive coordinator, which he
Right.
was. We were all laughing and snickering, like, what is he doing here? And Belichick, he is firmly on hot seat as well. I think Kraft, all those past Super Bowl victories, yes, he's very happy with them. But Belichick, I think, has been reading his own press clippings way too much, and he's his own de facto general manager, and he's always been able to pick the players he wanted. But you start wondering, has the game kind of passed him by? And when you look at Mac Jones, yeah, 14 game starter, 14 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And Zappy had that run last year, and everybody said, well, maybe Zappy's a guy. Well, they cut Zappy. So now there's really nobody breathing over Mac Jones's shoulder. I
Right.
know they have Malik Cunningham on the practice squad, guys like that. But this is his chance to be the leader of this team. Bill O'Brien was a pretty good quarterbacks coach in the past, not a good head coach. His guys were able to put up some numbers with him. He's surly too, so that's going to be interesting to see if Mac Jones can get along with him. I heard Mac Jones can kind of be contentious in terms of the play calling and what he wants to do with the offense. He wants that input that he had with Saban, Sarkisian, and those guys when they were at Alabama. But it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But I definitely think Mac Jones is on hot seat.
That was a really good point you brought up. They don't have a backup quarterback, right? I mean, to push him, that's what you need. And Matt Light, who won a couple Super Bowls, I believe, with the Patriots, just came out on a podcast and said, quote, I like the way his rookie season ended. I like the way that he approached the game there. I don't like what I saw last season for a lot of reasons, which you just kind of highlighted, quote, and as an offensive lineman, I don't ever want the guy behind me ever to put himself in a position that Mac did just in terms of the antics and the optics, showing up players, not listening, not engaged. I think they're in for a really long season. And I think if this kid doesn't rebound in year number 3, they're going to have to start looking in another direction. Back to the NFC. Listen, Dak Prescott, how do you not say he's not put on notice, right? He's got the same playoff record as Romo does. He's 2-4 in the playoffs. I mean, so did we not criticize Tony Romo all those years and say he couldn't win a game? He's a choker. He can't get it done. This is a team that hasn't sniffed a Super Bowl in 30-something odd years, haven't been to an NFC championship. You go back all the way to 95. There was talk prior to the draft that Dallas was enamored with C.J. Stroud, but you weren't going to get him where they were selecting with that high draft pick. I don't really know what you do with Dak Prescott right now, in addition to trading for Trey Lance, having Cooper Rush as a backup. I think this can go south fast if they start off 2-4, 2-6, 3-5, and he's struggling like he did last season. I think he was tied for the NFL lead in interceptions, and he only played 12 games. That's not what a franchise quarterback that symbolizes. So right now, Prescott, how hot is the seat for him in Dallas?
That seat's real hot in Dallas. Number one, we always know, the NFL's most lucrative franchise, so all the eyes are on them. They're on national TV, so there's going to be a spotlight there. But then you have Jerry Jones, the head owner and GM. He's on a hot seat because he wants to win before his son Stephen Jones pushes him out of the way, and then we know Mike McCarthy. He's he's been he's on a hot seat as soon as
No
he signed
doubt.
that contract, not living up to press clippings, obviously getting Kellen Moore out of there. Somebody was kind of waiting in the wings that may help McCarthy. But now he is the person that's in charge of this offense. So getting back to Dak Prescott, um, you know, does this offense fit him? They run more of a West Coast situation. I think Dak always thrived in play action where he had a very good running back. Yes, Pollard's a good back in terms of at swing passes and all that stuff, but he's not a move the change type of guy where like Zeke was early in his career where they had to play action and he could have some success on it. So it's going to be interesting to see does this offense fit what Prescott wants to do. Obviously, a lot of talent with Dallas, but yeah, you have to say Jerry Jones wants to win and Dak Prescott is on hot seat, particularly with that contract kind of ending. And let's not forget they just made the big trade as well. So, you bring in Trey Lance, and now he's the quarterback of waiting. So Dak Prescott's got to get it done, or I think, yeah, they eat some of that dead cap money and then jettison him.
Wow. I mean, think about this. They just gave the tackle Steele an $86.8 million extension, $50 million in guaranteed. They signed Diggs to corner, 5 years, $97 million. They say they signed the safety Malik Hooker, 3 years. I think it was $25 million. You rework Zach Martin's deal, all pro right guard. I'm fine with that. You want to sign CeeDee Lamb, Dak signed through 2024. And I haven't even mentioned the best player in that locker room in Micah Parsons, who is due for an extension after the season. So, man, I'll tell you, it's a lot of money you'd have to eat, but they need. I believe if the Dallas Cowboys do not get to the NFC Championship, at least an NFC Championship appearance, and I said it the last several years, depending upon what Harbaugh does in Michigan, McCarthy's going to be out of a job. And if Harbaugh goes out on top, Jerry Jones is going to open up the checkbook. But as for the quarterback, he might be out as well with the head coach. I mean, they just spent a lot of money on these guys that I just mentioned. And again, Dak is signed through 2024. So it's
and so is Trey Lance. He's 2024 as well. So this is a 2-year rental.
that's
They're
right.
going to see what they can do. And you're right, Q. This is a team firmly on a hot seat. They need to get it done. And it's going to be interesting to see how Dak handles this. But last year, 15 interceptions to lead the league, tied with Davis Mills. Everybody just forgets about Davis Mills was through as many. But Dak Prescott is not the guy who they Dallas wants him to be. I'll just put it that way.
What was his decision making? Do you attribute to hearing footsteps, the offensive line not having enough weapons, or just having a really down and bad year? Is it the play call? I mean, the decision making of a guy like Prescott, we're not talking like he's a top 10 quarterback, or I should say top 10 draft pick. He was a fourth round draft pick, right? And all of a sudden came onto the scene and put up some really nice numbers. But the decision making at this point of his career, it's unacceptable. I mean, you only a few, one or two can get away with running to your right and throwing across your body. And that's the biggest no-no, but the red zone picks, the ill-advised throws, the bad decision making, the taking sacks. I mean, what do you
And
attribute
Q,
that to?
when he was let's not forget he was rookie of the year, his rookie year, not Ezekiel Elliott. And when he didn't have Zeke to lean on, because Zeke was not the same player he was, and he's better when he's an efficient quarterback. You always kind of remember he would have like 20 touchdowns
Yeah.
and 4 interceptions. He always took care of the football. Sometimes he held it too long, in my opinion, but now he's looking for these big plays and he's forcing the ball in there to CeeDee Lamb. And we talk about this a lot. We've seen this in the past where Randy Moss was with some quarterbacks that were not that great. They try to force feed that ball into Randy Moss. And next thing you know, Jeff George is throwing all those interceptions. So this is that type of situations. He's trying to get the ball out of his hands and into his playmakers, but he's got to do a better job. And coaches want a quarterback that's going to have high efficiency in terms of completions percentage and then no turnovers. And you talk about Micah Parsons, the guys on that defense, they have some guys, hey, play small ball, win ugly.
Yeah.
You don't need to have all those stats, but Dak wants to have those big stats, and McCarthy, I think, does as well. And that's where they get themselves in trouble.
That's a good point, too. Again, Sunday edition, hour number 2 of BYP. Back your play with Q. Rich Quinones here, Lloyd Vance. All right, my last BYP quarterback on the hot seat. I crushed him last year. I think he's really on the decline, is Russell Wilson. I've been saying it for the last several years. Now, look, he had a career year in 2020. He put up monster numbers, 40 touchdowns, I think it was. Didn't turn the ball over, played really well. I know Sean Payton has come out and said, look, I think you'll get to 2021, 2022. Is he closer to 2020? I saw a quarterback that was very tentative, hesitant, running for his life because of that offensive line, having to deal with a head coach that was really overmatched in Nathaniel Hackett. I just think Russell Wilson will be one of the most fascinating quarterbacks to watch this year because if anyone thinks right away Sean Payton's going to come in and that's going to be a +3 to 5 win team just because of Sean Payton, let's not forget, all those years they were winning in New Orleans, they had a lot of weapons, they had Breeze, but they also had horrible choke jobs and moments in the playoffs, right? So there's something to be said about that. And also look at the division that they're playing in, right? The Chargers going to be better. Kansas City is Kansas City. We don't know yet with the Raiders. But again, I think a substantial amount of pressure is on Russell Wilson because of the contract that he signed and because Denver was taking a page out of the Rams' books. We're going to sell our soul and see if we can get a Super Bowl championship, a Super Bowl appearance. And that wasn't the case last year. Is that season went south real fast. I mean, you can argue the season went south in week 1 when they lost.
Yeah, and everybody's going to say Nathaniel Hackett, and Peyton wanted his pound of flesh from Nathaniel Hackett. Started that big fight with the Jets, and
Yep.
but it is Russell Wilson. He's the guy on the field, and he just did not get it done, as you said. 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and only 15 starts. What really jumped out to me is he only ran the ball 55 times for 277 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not his game. He was always a scrambler, picking up yards when he had to, at least 500 yards rushing each season, and that would help with the play action. Yes, he has a very strong arm. He tries to trust it, and everybody's going to say, I think it was Patrick last year that had the ACL, and he's had some injuries at the receiver position here and there. But he's got more than enough on offense in terms of he should do a better job and be more efficient. 11 interceptions, that's just way too high for him. And they were another one. They lost Javonte Williams last year with that bad knee injury. He is back this year. He has Samaje Perine also in that backfield. And they're probably going to try to run the football first, take some of the pressure off Russell Wilson. And, Peyton, as you said, he's coming there with that big resume. The Broncos actually beat the Cowboys. I always thought the Cowboys were going to sign him to be their head coach eventually because Jerry Jones is always enamored with Sean Payton. But Broncos beat him to it. He's their guy now, and he's supposed to have that Super Bowl pedigree. But as we talked about, he's got a ton of 7-9 seasons from his years with the Saints, and there were years where Drew Brees was beat up and they just didn't get it done. And yes, they have it. He's another one like McCarthy. He's got that one Super Bowl to say, hey, I can hang my hat on this, but sometimes that's just not. Maybe he got lucky. Look at George Seifert. He had one Super Bowl win, and he always hung his hat on that with the Niners and then with the Carolina Panthers, and just never could get it done. So it's going to be interesting to see how Russell Wilson does, and he is definitely on a hot seat. And at his age, you got to put age is a big factor in there. I think he's in his mid-30s, like 34,
34.
35. Yeah, so he's getting older, and unless you're Tom Brady, you're not improving as you're getting older.
Yeah, I like the analogy with Seifert, right? They win in 88 with Walsh and Montana. They win again in 89, 90, the Giants, Matt Barr with the field goal at the end, and Summerall with those historic words, there will be no three-peat. Everything kind of, they had to go in limbo and in flux with the franchise until 95. Wilson's 34. He's been sacked 482 times. He was sacked 55
Wow.
times last year. I mean,
But they're trying to fix that line. I know they're bringing McGlinchey over from the Niners, who was kind of down in terms of his ratings, PFF and all that stuff. But the overall line, Lloyd Cushenberry, who I thought he was going to be pretty good coming out of LSU at the center position, he's had some difficulty picking up blitzes and getting that line organized. So I don't see that getting much better. I know they in the draft they brought in like 2 or 3 younger linemen, but you know how it is with those young linemen. It's going to take a couple years for them to develop and get ready for the NFL game, unless they're Tristan Wirfs type of player who came in and helped the Bucs win that Super Bowl. Yeah, that's very odd.
I know everything that Peyton has said, and he likes to yap too, but and I don't know if this is a hot take. It's just my gut telling me if this team struggles and he struggles, can you foresee a scenario where Peyton, who has no ties or loyalty to Russell Wilson whatsoever, can you see a scenario where Russell Wilson gets benched? Because there was talk last year, sit him, bench him.
Their GM George Payton is kind of really married to Russell Wilson. He was the one that brought him in there, and let's not forget they backed up the Brinks truck and with Seattle. They gave him a couple number ones, I
Yep.
think, and
Yep.
maybe a 2 in there. It was a king's ransom. So they're stuck with Russell Wilson. They gave him the extension, but he's got to do better. I know he wants to be a superstar and married to Sierra, and he thinks he's a media icon, a Hall of Famer in waiting. Yes, he has one Super Bowl win as well, but as we said, it's a what have you done for me league, and you have Caleb Williams and other good young quarterbacks coming out in this draft, and Sean Payton, a guy who's trying to make his own mark there in Denver, because let's not forget Denver got rid of also John Elway. They got jettisoned him, so it's a whole new beginning there with the Walton Penner family buying that team, and they want to have they want wins
Yeah.
because I think they're another team kind of looking for a new stadium. They have a new owner in there, so yeah, Russell Wilson firmly on the hot seat. And I could foresee a situation where if Williams still a little banged up, if P-Ron's not getting going, and they have to rely more on the passing game, and he's struggling, yes, maybe they look to another guy and then turn the page to the future.
I know you mentioned a couple that you had the other day. You've had another day or two to kind of sit on
Yeah.
it. Give me one or two before I let you get out of here that you think all eyes will be on them this year.
Well, I got probably a surprising one to a lot of people, and you talk about windows closing. I'm going to go with Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. This team, yes, last year 13-3, and the year before that 11-6, 13-3, 10-6, all underneath this young quarterback, and he seems to be developing his next big thing. But when I look at him, you'd start wondering, all right, did he take too many hits? Is he becoming like a Cam Newton where his shoulder's bothering him and he's still trying to fight through it, but he's maybe hurting his team? Last year, Josh Allen had 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, another one where he's putting the ball in kind of some bad spots. He rushed the
Yep.
ball 124 times, 762 yards, 7 touchdowns. Um, you know, everybody liked Andrew Luck. The way he played, that moxie, he wouldn't back down from linebackers. And that kind of reminds me a lot with what's happening here with Josh Allen. He's got to kind of change his game. And then not having Dable is a big loss for them.
Think so.
Ken Dorsey was he's the quarterback's coach, and now he's the offensive coordinator. Is Ken Dorsey the same as Dable? I don't think so. He's not the same play designer. So, a lot of pressure on Josh Allen, and is the window closing on him and Sean McDermott, the coach who's been there, one more season than Josh Allen. They're definitely on a hot seat up in Buffalo.
He didn't play particularly well in spots last year. I mean, even the Miami game, they could have easily lost that game. And Miami had a friggin' a kid that no one heard of that played his guts out because Tua got knocked out prior to. Allen in that game, the AFC Championship against Cincinnati, had the bad pick, did not play particularly well. I think the line, he got sacked 3 or 4 times in that game. But again, you saw throughout the course of the season, the decision-making at times was questionable. Now, he's still a relatively young quarterback. I mean, I still believe he's a top 10 quarterback, but you can be a top 10 quarterback and still be on the hot seat.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like when we say be on the hot seat, we mean like the pressure. And the last 2 seasons, they've lost in the divisional round. Yes, everybody's going to say that was a hard luck loss to Kansas City in 2021. But it is what it is, and he's got to get done. And he's supposed to be this new face of the NFL in terms of he's that big, strong, dual threat quarterback that can beat you with his arms as well as his legs. But you got to start wondering, okay, have teams kind of caught up to him? And this is another guy. He's in a very tough division. Miami's gotten better in terms of their defense with Phillips and Xavier Howard and the rest of those guys. And then we talked about the Jets over and over this offseason. Now the Jets are coming for him. So this is going to be fun to see if he's ready to step up to the challenge. But definitely, Josh Allen is on the hot seat.
Yeah, it's an interesting name to throw out there, but you're right, because there are certain teams, and we'll get into it later in the week, where we love to talk about that proverbial window shutting and closing. And this is the NFL, man. I mean, when you have an opportunity, it's very hard to win games every Sunday. It's very hard to get to the playoffs, make a run, get to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. More times than not, the teams that lose it, sometimes you don't hear from them for a while. So teams like Buffalo that are trying to get there with Allen, Cincinnati that's been there, that loss. I mean, the Eagles trying to get back after losing last year, man, it's a tough nut to crack. But that's why they give you 17 weeks.
This guy's on a hot seat for another reason. And it's the Ravens quarterback, Lamar Jackson. He got that huge contract,
Right.
5-year extension, $260 million. 72.5 signing bonus, and then 135 million guaranteed. So when they start giving you that type of money, yes, you win 75% of your games, and you make the highlight reel type plays, and you lead the league in rushing for a quarterback, all-time record in the season. But he's got to win, particularly in the postseason, and live up to that deal now. So he's firmly on a hot seat there. I've heard from a lot of my Ravens fans, and they want to see more from him.
All right. This week, we start to give out our divisional winners, playoff participants, our Super Bowl predictions, and then we'll turn around later in the week. And we got week 1 right there, as they say. And the Duke is getting prepared. So it's our last Sunday. And then
I was just thinking the same thing, all right. Next Sunday, got the red zone on, all my stuff, I'll be tweeting I'll be glued to all the action, and that's what it's all about,
Look forward to it.
And then unfortunately it goes too quick. So I'm definitely going to enjoy it.
Yeah, we have to, man. We have to. As we get older, you certainly have to, time does not stop for anyone. But looking forward to another year breaking down the games, Vance's view, everything we do on BYP. And we'll do it next week. My friend, always appreciate you jumping on board. Have a great Sunday.
Shoot, talk to you later.